Hi, guys. Welcome to the Resurrected Marriage Podcast. I'm Shauna Gonzalez.
Marcos Gonzalez.
My handsome husband.
Took the words out of my mouth.
Well, this has been a long time coming. It's been quite the journey. And we've overcome some hurdles.
Tons.
Yes, but we're here and I'm really proud of us.
I know. We got the kids in bed early.
Yeah.
I think
They're even having a sleepover.
Yeah. And you can hear a pin drop.
The dogs are put away. Cats are asleep. It's so peaceful. It's just you and I.
Yeah.
It's like date night.
Right? But we're working on this podcast.
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord, it's happening. So yeah, this is the Resurrected Marriage Podcast. A little bit about the podcast is the Lord placed this on my heart. Well, wait first. Before I go into that, let's tell everybody about who we are. So we have been married for 10 years. We have 2 girls.
Correct so far?
So far.
So far, so good.
And God willing, 2 more in the future.
Hopefully.
We've got Ramona and Sequoia, 9 and almost 9 this week, and 7.
Yeah.
9 this week. That kind of hits because I feel like this is her last double digits next year, and that's our baby.
Right.
No longer a baby. But so yeah, we've been married for 10 years. And last summer, not last summer. Before this summer, the Lord placed it on my heart to start this podcast. He was speaking to me. And for those of you who know us, and know our testimony, we have quite a story.
Yep. And
we have used our story in the past and currently to bring hope to others who are struggling in their marriage. We quickly dived into leadership with a marriage ministry that we're working with, and the Lord was very clear within that time that we needed to do something more, and specifically to showcase other marital testimonies who have placed where the couple has placed the Lord in their marriage and has allowed the Lord to work in them and resurrect their marriage from the grave up, just like He did with us. So this podcast is not about Shauna and Marcos.
No, we bore you guys with all the small details that we get into.
This is about other people in their marriages and how their marriage has been saved by Christ. And so we just really wanted to glorify God, and this is what He's told us to do. So we're just being obedient.
So here we are at 11 p.m. in our living room.
Yeah.
Sleep deprived, but making it happen.
No excuses.
No excuses.
No excuses.
That's right.
So we're going to share our testimony, and then every episode is going to be about another testimony.
Yeah, different couples and how God came in and saved their marriage. I think that there's something to be said for knowing that others are in the same spot you've been and they came out the other side.
Yeah. Or are currently in.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much hope in that, because when you're in the thick of it, you just feel like you're alone. I know that, we felt like we were alone.
Even when you're surrounded by people.
Yes. And it's a very vulnerable place to share your marital struggles or any kind of struggles that you're dealing with. So most of us, we don't share what we're going through in our marriage or personally, really to be able to listen to how other people have, been through the fiery trials and are now on the other side of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And have overcome. It's very life-giving. And so that's what we want to do. We want to give life to people and to just share that hope.
Yeah, spread the hope and joy.
Yeah.
So
we're going to start with our testimony, and then next episode we're going to go into the Sappingtons' testimony. And if you don't know them, they are the directors and founders of Living Victorious Marriage, who we partner with. We're also group leaders in that ministry. So,
And they're really good people to be in cahoots with.
yes.
Yeah, just real quick. We took a few of the classes and we learned so much. And it gave us a lot of tools.
Mm-hmm.
So I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Look them up.
Yeah, we'll get into that later. But so a little bit about us. We met in 2014.
We used to work at Trader Joe's at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Where we met.
yeah, we were kind of just crossing paths at that time, not necessarily wanting to have a relationship with each other. We were in our own worlds, but we hung out. We were friends.
Yeah. And it was a very instant friendship. Really, I mean, now looking back, I'm like, wow, that was just divine intervention. He was on hold.
Yeah. I had sworn in to go into the Navy probably that month that I met you. Yeah.
And I had just moved there from San Diego. I had just moved to Oakland from San Diego, which is where we met, and transferred to a college up there. And we were just friends for a solid month, but we were inseparable. We did everything together. It was almost like the kindred spirits coming together and just, we just never stopped hanging out. We were so in the moment. We never really looked to the future. I knew he was leaving for boot camp. I was in school to be an archaeologist. Anthropologist. And
it was a long time ago.
It's 11 o'clock at night. So we were on different paths, but in the moment we were just hanging out and having fun and living in the moment. But then that quickly turned into a relationship. We met in August. We got pregnant in January. That's how quick it went. And we did not know each other. And we were in our mid-20s, so we weren't super young, but we didn't know each other.
Definitely did not.
No.
Like we knew, like I knew she could down some shots, but that's all I knew. Really, like she was a good kindred spirit, and
yeah, I used to be a partier.
Yeah, and
we would party together.
Yep, we both did.
And
that's the extent of it, essentially.
Just having fun.
Yeah.
And then I got pregnant. Then he went off to boot camp. And then as soon as he graduated 8 weeks later, I was moving out to Illinois where he was. And it was like, I knew he was going to boot camp. We never really talked about, okay, what's going to happen when you leave? And then we got pregnant. And then it was like, okay, now we know what's going to happen when you leave. Like, we're going to continue this relationship. We have a baby now. So I moved out to Illinois and we didn't have any family.
No, I think that's when we first finally started to realize that, oh man, we're going to have to plan stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to have to be adults.
I also realized we didn't know each other.
Yeah.
So there was this stage of getting to know each other, but also like our relationship just excelled really quickly. So we're just forced to kind of
adapt, essentially.
Yeah. But we didn't know what it looked like to be a husband and wife.
Yeah. We both come from, broken homes where my parents slept in different rooms, and I thought that was normal. And then I got to school. I think it was like middle school. I made it that far. Then I realized, oh man, everybody's parents sleep in the same bed. I'm the odd one out. But I mean, again, that just goes to show, like, if you live in that environment, you just don't know anything else. And so we were already set up to fail.
Yeah, we were. And then my parents divorced when I was really young, so I don't remember them being married. Really, I didn't realize that they were actually married until I was older and they had gotten divorced. I just always thought they were just friends living two different places, and I just hopped back and forth between their homes. That was just what was normal to me. And they co-parented very, very well. So I never really saw them fight. There were never really any issues that I saw. It hid all of that really well for me. But my mother got remarried to my sister's father, and that's where all of my dysfunction came from. Growing up, I had two dads, and it was so joyous to me. I was like, oh, I got two dads. He was wonderful.
2 Christmases.
Yeah. extra set of grandparents. It was so great. He truly treated me like I was his daughter. But because he treated me like I was his daughter, when the divorce happened, that's where all of my issues came from. But looking at how him and my mother in their relationship, it was not a healthy relationship. And that was my example. So I knew what I didn't want, but I did not know how to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the foundation of our marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. So
and if you can imagine having a foundation like that, I mean,
it was a struggle.
It was.
And then you add to the mix of the change that takes place when you join the military and a baby that is on the way. That in itself is just like...
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not like we planned for Ramona, right? I think because we didn't plan for her, there was this sense of like he joined the Navy with this single sailor mentality. He's going to go travel the world and
I'm going to do my 20 years.
Yeah. And it's, just going to be him, and he's not going to have a family. He's not going to have to worry about kids or any of that. And then just so quickly, he was catapulted into fatherhood and husbandhood, and he was not ready for it at all.
I thought, just like all men do, I thought I had a grasp on it, and I did not.
Yeah.
And I think it was myself I was just fooling myself because I thought I could do it, and we didn't have the community to be supported in that way, or to have someone to reach out, and it was detrimental.
Yeah. Yeah. And, for us women, for most of us, at least for me, you become pregnant and then you have your baby, and it's this like instant switch in your brain. At least it's what it felt like for me. I was just instantly this mother, and that's all I cared about was being a mom. And it was this like innate thing in me where I was going to be the best mom I could. And I thought I was going to try and be the best wife I could. And that is the area that I failed. I excelled at being a mom, but being a wife, I'm backing up. So when we were in Illinois, he was in school for 16 hours a day. So it was me and Ramona and our dog, Luffy. And for 16 hours a day by ourselves, I made one friend. We would hang out occasionally, but I didn't have family. So I was just hyper focused on being a mom, right? And neglecting him. And then our community was his peers, and his peers were very young. We were the older ones. And so our house would be the house they would come to. And of course, anybody who knows me, I open up my home. And, you instantly become part of my family. And so that's what I did. And it was just very much this party mentality while I'm trying to be a mom. And then everybody that is coming over to our home is just trying to have a good time.
Yeah.
And our environment at the time was not
family conducive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Me being the oldest in the group of the sailors that we were surrounded by, it leads you into the wrong things. I mean, think about it. You are who your friends are, right? So if you're hanging around with 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, you're going to act like 18, 19-year-olds. And they're all single, so you're going to act like a single 18, 19-year-old. And that's all we had besides your friends. And it was, yeah. I mean, that's what led up to my first mess up, was the environment, sudden changes, and not feeling like I was one worthy of your attention, and not having any attention Because again, I would be out 16 hours, come back home, and, like a husband, I'd be wanting my wife, but not the mom. But then I got the mom, and it was just, I felt like it was just so dysfunctional.
Yeah, and it was.
And I didn't know how to fix it. And being an engineer, like, I need to fix things, but I didn't know how to because I didn't have the training. I didn't have the experience of having a good family or a good environment again.
And communication.
He
didn't know how to communicate it to me. I didn't know how to communicate my needs to him, right? He would come home and I'd be like, oh my goodness, I can get a break for a moment. And he needs to spend time with our daughter. So it's a win-win. Spend time with our daughter. I get a little bit of a break, not realizing that he needs to spend time with me and he needs to connect with me. And that's what comes first before our child at the time. And again, just being so hyper-focused on being a mom and just forgetting that I was his wife. And he wasn't getting his love tank filled. He wasn't feeling loved. I was neglecting our marriage.
Yeah.
And so he went outside of our marriage.
Yeah. And I think not just like how you said, like being selfish, I think that was one of my biggest things too, is that I wanted you and it was my want. It wasn't what the family wanted or needed. It was that I wanted, and I didn't act accordingly, which should have been, how can I help you? I know you've had all day with the baby. Let me help you with the baby. Let me do this. Let me go melt down some breast milk or something. But I didn't do that. I just wanted you, and I love Ramona so much. But in that time, it was just such a change.
Yeah. And very, very quick change.
Yeah. And so I messed up, right? I went looking for attention outside, and luckily she caught that early and we didn't act on it or anything like that. So it was just definitely a lot more of an emotional.
Yeah. An emotional thing than.
Once that happened, we didn't even seek help.
No. Well, did I? No, I don't think I did.
No, you didn't.
No, I didn't. But for me, it was I didn't do anything wrong here.
Yeah.
Like, you are the problem.
Yeah.
Because I'm here taking care of our house, our kid. In my mind, I'm taking care of you sexually when I was in the mood. Like, I'm like, okay, what else am I supposed to be doing? I'm not the problem. You are. And therapy wasn't really.
Yeah, it wasn't
a conversation.
No.
He was just so apologetic and doing all the things to make up for it. So it's like, okay, he's pleasing me. He is reconciling with me, like he's doing all the things. But I for a long time didn't realize that I was the problem as well. Like, it wasn't just him, it was both of us.
Yeah. And so the full blame would be on one side, and that's what we concentrated on, was the blame, without seeing actions of both sides.
The root cause.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we moved on. And then I think it was a year later, we had moved over to Virginia for some training. And this time around, the individuals that we were with that point in time had split up into different bases. And so we decided we as in a few of the guys and I decided to go visit the other group. And I think that's what.
Well, and at this point, we had what we thought we were in a good spot.
Yeah.
Right.
We thought we were pretty stable.
Yeah. And he come to me, he's like, hey, having a guy's weekend. Are you cool if I go? And I was like, yeah. In my mind, I'm like, yeah, we're in a really good spot. It's been about a year. You go for it. Like, you have fun, go hang out with you guys, go see your friends that you haven't seen in a while since Illinois. And so he left. And the whole time the whole time. And now looking back, now that I have a faith, because then we did not have a faith. We are fairly new believers.
Mm-hmm.
I came to the Lord in 2 years ago.
No.
Yeah.
No.
22, summer of 22.
Really?
Yeah, we moved here in fall of 21.
Oh, that's right.
Summer.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it was 21.
Yeah, I know. I feel like it's been a whole lifetime since I came to Christ. But
real quick, she went to an Elevate concert show or pop-up. Sorry.
Elevation worship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Elevation worship. Clearly. And she decided to get baptized there. And she didn't even tell me.
I did not, but there's a little bit of backstory about this, and this is going off into another
tangent. Sorry.
So when I came to the Lord, he was not very accepting because of a lot of reasons, and we'll get there in our testimony in a minute, but he was not very accepting. So I was very afraid to tell you. That's why. Because about a year had gone by of just so much condemnation from you. And so that was just what I had been going through for a year of you're not coming to church with us and just saying things about me listening to worship music. It was just a lot. Well, so my sister and her brother-in-law had invited us to an Elevation Worship pop-up service in Riverside. And of course I was like, yeah, let's go. And he came along just because I just bought the tickets and I was like, we're doing this. And then I got an email saying they were doing baptisms. I got the email the night before, and immediately the Holy Spirit was like, this is you're doing this. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this, but am I really doing this? And then I prayed about it and I was like, Lord, just please speak to me. If I'm supposed to be doing this, getting baptized tomorrow, please just make it very clear. I went to bed and I dreamt about it. I had a dream that we were there and I got baptized, and I woke up and I was like, okay, Lord, I hear you. Thank you. I'll get baptized. But I was so scared to tell him because I was just afraid. It also took me a long time to not be a closeted Christian, which is a whole nother topic, but we're not going to get into. But I was just scared. Yeah. And then I told him right as we were getting in the car after I had signed up, and I was like, oh, by the way, I'm getting baptized. And he was like, what? What? And kind of really his reaction was affirming. I was like, oh, see, he's mad at me. He's mad at me. This is going to be a whole thing. But not realizing, no, he was mad because he's my husband. These are important things I should be speaking to him about. And mind you, this is in the very, very beginning of when we started working on our marriage. But yeah. Anyways.
But going back.
Up.
So we go to this other base, and as all 18, 19, 21-year-old sailors do.
But he was not. You were 25 at the time.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
24.
But again, association, right?
Yeah, association, start drinking, and then I blacked out, and then mess up number 2 happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole time he was there, I mean, now I'm like, the Holy Spirit was just speaking to me, but I knew something was wrong. I knew it. And I remember really everything about how I was feeling. But I was just like, no, you know what? Maybe I'm just being really insecure right now. It's nothing. Everything's going to be fine. He was going to see some friends, and he proposed it to me that he was going on a guys trip. But the group that the main group of students that he was with in Illinois was about 50-50 men and women. And the women, all of them I brought in. It was just inappropriate friendships. And at the time, we didn't really understand that we shouldn't have opposite sex friendships if they are not pursuing your spouse, right? So wives, you should not be having a male friend if he is not pursuing your husband and having a friendship. like at the same level, if not more, than the friendship he wants to have with you.
Yeah.
And vice versa, husbands.
Yeah. Out of respect, if you really are friends, right, you're going to want to be there with both of them because they are one, just like in the Bible, we become one flesh. So the friendship has to be equal between both.
Yeah. But unfortunately, we don't live in a culture today where that is taught, right? And
definitely not.
And it's not a red flag to people. But then you look at the divorce rate and you're like, okay, well, it should be a red flag to people.
100%.
So anyways, those women were not the best women to be around. And I knew it. I knew that something was going to happen, but I didn't want to believe it. I had even mentioned it to him before, like, hey, these women are not the best women for you to be around, and they have different intentions. And of course, a lot of husbands and wives say this when their spouses confront them about their opposite sex friends, and they react the way he did.
Yeah. Deny.
Like, oh, no.
Yeah. And we're just so oblivious to some of that stuff. I mean, there are men who do see it and know, and they just decide not to do things. But most men are definitely oblivious to that. And it's not until someone talks to you or mentors you in that specific area, actually, like, hey, man, that's kind of sketch, man. If you value your marriage, you might want to pump the brakes on that,
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So when he went on this guy's trip, he ended up hanging out with those women. And when he blacked out, that's when things happened. The difference is that I didn't find out on my own. He came home and confessed everything to me right away, which in my book was, that was everything, right? Because to do that right away, one to confess right away, that's gut wrenching, being the person that's confessing. And to me, it spoke volumes. I was like, okay, this is not intentional. It was very clear. It was an irresponsible night. And it was very clear that it wasn't, I don't know. What am I trying to say? It wasn't planned. It wasn't something that like he was pursuing. It was just a stupid drunken night.
Yeah.
Not that it made it okay, but the first time it was intentional.
Yeah.
This was a mistake.
Yeah.
And he came home and he confessed. And of course, I was upset and hurt, and all the feelings kicked him out of our bedroom, almost kicked him out of our house to live back in the barracks. But I didn't, because I wanted my eyes on him. I didn't know what he's doing every minute.
Well played. That's when we actually started therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, not knowing, but Holy Spirit threw out some advice, like, you guys really need to go see some therapy.
Well, at this point I was like, okay, this is the second time and again, I was solely focused on him. Like, you have some deep rooted issues, dude. You got to deal with, like.
And I was like, yes, I do.
There's something inside you need to work out. If this is clearly happening again, and it's, it's not going to happen a third time. So you need to go to therapy. And that's when therapy was brought up. So he went to therapy. I recognized I am got some hurt going on here. I need to go to therapy. So we went separately to secular therapy.
Yeah.
It was not Christian counseling.
Yeah. And it felt like they were constantly trying to diagnose me rather than try and help me through the situation, walk with me. But it was more of like, you're depressed. You know what? I think you got the big sad. That's it. That's what it felt like. I don't know how it felt for you.
Honestly, I quit. I stopped
quit.
going because I had been going to therapy since I was a kid. I've gone to so many therapists in my childhood. I felt like more than the usual person. And I knew everything she was telling me. I was sitting there in her office, just like telling her everything that had happened, reliving everything. And everything she was telling me, I already knew. And I'm like, I could do this myself. This is a waste of time. I could be home with our baby. It's just a waste of time. So I'm going to just stop. And I stopped.
And I kept going.
Yeah, he kept going until we moved.
Mm-hmm.
We had another move to San Diego.
Yeah. So we went from Illinois to Virginia, then back to San Diego.
And right before we moved to San Diego, actually, right around the time where he had a second mess up, I got pregnant. I got pregnant with our youngest. And that was, to me, just a sign I'm not divorcing him. Also, because I've always known that deep down inside, he's just a good man. He's got a lot of stuff to work out. That was playing in my mind. He's such a good man. He just has stuff to work through.
I looked like I was traveling to another country because I had some baggage.
So, and I, just divorcing him was never really a thought. It was more of like, I need to, in some way, even if I'm angry and can't stand to be around him, I'm going to walk alongside him and he's going to work out his stuff.
Yeah.
Because we have kids together. And I feel like my parents just gave up. I mean, they were young, really, really young. They were babies having babies.
Mm-hmm.
However, the Lord had a plan for them.
Yeah.
But I refused. I'm not giving up. And we're going to work through this. And he's going to work through his stuff. And somehow we're going to get through it.
Yep.
Even if I got to just swallow all my, just shove everything deep down inside.
And put a latch on that. Yeah. And with this move, I began my sea tour. So of the 365 days, I was only home 100 days, maybe less, maybe 90.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
right after we had Sequoia, he left.
Yeah.
Our youngest. And that really was so difficult for me because he was out at sea. I was left with all of these feelings that I didn't deal with.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to deal with it. The therapist I went to was no help. And so everything just started coming up. And I was so insecure. I was so jealous. Every port call, I was like, I knew he'd be at port and I'd be like, what is he doing? Just all the things would just fester. The enemy would just use that really. And my insecurities were just magnified. And then he would come home from deployment or an underway, and I'd be looking through his phone, trying to find something, just so convinced that he had a ship wife, because that's also, that's a part of the Navy culture is you have ship wives, ship husbands, and what you do out at sea, that's what you do out at sea. And when you come home, then you go back to your family. And so I was convinced that was him because he had a record at this point. And even though he had been doing the work, I wasn't. And so I just had all these feelings. It was a really, really, really dark place to be in.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I was doing everything I could.
Yeah.
To be a good husband, right? When I would hit port, I'd go hang out with the guys and primarily the ones that were married. I stayed away from a lot of the single people. And around that time, she started attending church as well, right?
Well, we had moved to Washington. And right before I moved to Washington, I realized that I had severe postpartum depression. And then we moved to Washington. And then I went back to counseling. And again, it was the same thing. She just told me everything that I kind of knew. But really, the common denominator with my experience, they were not Christian counselors. It was so much worldly advice and guidance and counsel. And that's really not what I was seeking, even though I didn't know that I was seeking the Lord. That's really what I needed. So then we moved back to San Diego after Washington, and my sister and my brother and our brother-in-law were going to church, and they invited us, and I started attending with our kids while he was in and out of sea, and then he would come along, but he was just trying to be supportive. He was doing all the things that he needed to do to just be the person he thought I wanted him to be.
Yeah.
He was conforming to
what I thought you wanted.
Yeah. Which was destructive in itself.
Yeah.
Because he also was like losing his sense of
self.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you do have a mess up like that, you give a little bit away, but you can't lose yourself in that completely.
Mm-hmm.
Or else you create resentment.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I can't do this anymore, and it just starts to simmer, and that's the worst.
Mm-hmm.
When I thought everything was going well, and we had workups, which is when you get ready for your next deployment.
Mm-hmm.
So I headed on out.
Mm-hmm. And then I messed up. So I had all my emotions, and I would self-medicate. So I would drink, I'd smoke weed. I was just self-medicating and trying to lessen the pain. Then I had a mess up. But the difference is between my mess up and his is that I didn't tell him right away. I did not have the courage, the bravery, all the things that he like. It's really impressive when I like think about how he could just come home and the next day just tell everything to me. I mean, it is so impressive to me because I kept it in and kept keeping it in. I was having all of these anxiety attacks because I had this deep, dark secret, and he had no idea I was having these anxiety attacks. So I was just suffering in silence and self-medicating even more. And finally, at the worst time, but if I didn't tell him, it was like do or die. Like my anxiety attacks were so bad, I felt like I was dying. And finally, at the worst time, right before he left for his deployment, it just all came out. I confessed everything. And I thought he was going to, and I was so delusional, but I thought in my mind, I'm like, okay, we're even. You know, you had 2 mess ups. I just wanted you to feel 1 ounce of everything that I felt. And I messed up, and this is what happened. And so we're even, right? And that was not what happened.
Not at all.
It was so delusional, but it's not what happened. And like, then he had to leave, and we could not work on it at all.
Nope. And then I'm off to a war zone, active back then. And
it was the worst deployment.
And I'm over here hurt, sad, angry. I mean, it was the great America of roller coaster.
Then our dog died that he had since he was 18 while he was on that deployment.
Yeah. So I've had this dog. I had that dog since I was 18. And she lived 15 years.
Yeah.
And that deployment, she died.
Yeah.
It was a rough deployment.
Yeah.
Needless to say, those, I don't even know how many months I was out. They all blur together.
It felt like an eternity.
Yeah. But when I got back, I did not want anything to do with Shauna whatsoever.
After I confessed, then he left. I was just in the dark. I mean, I felt like holding that dark secret in was the darkest pit I've ever been in, but him, like me confessing and him leaving. And now I'm like, now what do I do? That was a dark pit. And I don't really remember what had happened or why or how I found my counselor at the time. But somehow, really by the grace of God, I found a Christian counseling office in El Cajon. And I called them and immediately found a counselor through them and started going. So through his whole deployment, I was in therapy, but this time it was Christian counseling, and it made all the difference in the world. It was transformational. And my counselor, really, this was just like a gift from God, because my counselor was an ex-Marine. He was divorced because of infidelity. And our whole session was about Christ, every single session. So he had the perspective that I felt like was so beneficial for our marriage, being a military family, having infidelity in our marriage on both sides. And it was amazing. And so the whole time I'm going through therapy, he's introducing me to Christ. And he gives me a Bible. And through those sessions, I come to the Lord. So when he comes back, I'm this changed woman. Just
And I wasn't having it.
Radically changed. And he was like, "You are a hypocrite."
Yeah.
Like,
someone, just what someone who was hurt would say.
Yeah.
To someone who's been working on themselves. Yeah. And hasn't seen them putting in the work.
Mm-hmm.
So, just like a non-believer does, you reject everything and you hope that life takes its place, or karma or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So he comes back from deployment and he's hurt. I'm scared that he's going to divorce me. Rightly so. And then we have this table talk, which some of you have heard before, but we sit down and I'm like, okay, my counselor suggested that we go to therapy. There's another counselor that will take us, and he's a Christian counselor. Can we go? I don't think you wanted to go at first, did you? Because no. I know that we waited. It was like a couple days. Waited a couple days.
No, I to be honest, I probably said no just to spite you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because right around the same time, we also had this conversation where he asked me, he's like, "What do you need from me?" And I was like, "I just need you to be a godly man who's going to lead the girls and I to Christ." He was like, "No,
barking up the wrong tree, lady."
No, and who are you? Like, what? Yeah. Where is the woman that I met years ago? Like, why do you have worship music on playing in your car when I'm driving? Like, I don't want to be listening to this worship music while I'm driving your car. Like, change it. And he just hurtful things, but he was just out of anger. Right. And so I think maybe like a week later, we end up going to.
Yeah. I was like, why not? Like, I have 2 girls with this lady, and, at one point in time, I loved her with all my heart. So let's see if we can make something work.
Yeah.
Still bitter, still angry, still saddened, but we'll go work it out somehow.
Yeah. So we went to see Mark, our therapist, and he spoke to us like nobody had ever spoke to us before. He spoke to Marcos, like he would connect with Marcos in a way that nobody really had before. And then we would leave. When you're going to couples counseling, a lot of times you leave just don't feel well because you're having to rehash so much. Mm-hmm. And it's just not a good place to be in. Like, a lot of times it gets worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
But in our sessions, we would leave feeling so relieved. He would give us different perspectives, which led to more understanding. Mm-hmm. We would leave feeling like
we got a little piece of that love that we had at the beginning.
We'd be holding hands.
Yeah.
The building was beautiful. It was like a jungle inside. So
A
we were like,
river running through the center of it.
yeah, it was kind of hard to leave that place, like feeling defeated, but it was amazing. And it was just like every session, our love was growing back again.
Mhm.
And the reconciling was getting easier and easier. And for me, I was ready to reconcile. It was more of him.
Yeah.
I was diving in. I was ready to heal this. I was ready to do whatever work I needed to do. I was more so praying for him that his heart would soften for me. And it did every single time. And the Lord was so faithful. Looking back, it was just such a blessing. And fast forward, we knew, like, out of these sessions, we knew we weren't getting divorced. That was pretty much off the table.
Yep.
Off the table pretty quickly once we started these sessions with Mark. And then we bought a house here in Temecula.
Mm-hmm.
And
still, I wasn't really chasing that faith.
No.
Or didn't want to. So while Shauna went to see what church she liked or what spoke to her, I would stay home and play whatever video games I had at the time.
Yeah. Or mow the lawn or
work on the house.
Yeah.
Just work on any improvement, really.
So that was for about a year, right? And all the while I had other women telling me, and my father was always spoken to our marriage and always tried to stay neutral. Everybody would just tell me, you just need to pray for your husband. You know, just stop. Don't nag him. Don't beg him to go to church. Don't just shut your mouth and pray. That's the most powerful thing you could do. So that's what I did. And I just prayed. I prayed for an angel to come speak to my husband. And because I knew that I wasn't going to be the one to bring him to church, to bring him to Christ.
And then one day, we had just been arguing in the car. Not arguing. We're
not really arguers, but we're having a discussion.
We were
having the tone.
We had a heated discussion, but not necessarily boiling. Where it was again the subject of faith, right? And it was just, you really just want you to be the leader of your family, like just in faith. Like I'll be praying for it.
Mm-hmm. And as much as I shut my mouth and prayed, I also I had moments of I just needed to speak my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of those moments.
And he went into the store, pretty emotional, just quiet. And I think it was close towards the end of our trip.
The end of our grocery trip.
Yeah. And then I'm like, let's go forgot the chips. To the chips. Yeah. So we go to the chip aisle and there's probably like 2-3 people there. And out of nowhere, this gentleman taps me on my shoulder. And he's like, hey, I never do this, but I think I'm supposed to talk to you about how to be the leader of your family. You need to show them the path to Christ and how life should be.
Mm-hmm. And he starts talking about his past and
he was also military.
Yeah.
So automatically we had that connection.
Yeah. And he's like, look at your girls and your wife. Such a beautiful family.
Yeah. And she's bawling.
Yeah.
Next to the Doritos and Fritos. She's just bawling.
And our girls, they're like, can we please go? Mom, can we just go? I'm crying. He's just, and I'm like, I prayed for this man. He's the angel that I prayed for. I've been praying for so long. And oh my goodness, the Lord is so faithful. Look at this.
Yeah.
He brought this man in the chip aisle at the grocery store of all places to come and speak to my husband, the stranger. And how amazing it is that the Lord just placed this on his heart and he was obedient and followed through, which is a whole nother testimony, right? Being obedient to the Lord and what that can do in other people's lives. And it was the turning point in our family, really.
Yeah. And in my faith.
Yeah.
Then
it was a miracle.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I had to constantly wrestle with what just happened and kind of digest it, you know.
We left the grocery store like, what was that?
Yeah, what happened? Did we, what?
We were so dumbfounded. It was amazing.
Yeah. But it spoke to me, right? Because now that I believe and have a faith, was it coincidence? No, it was God sent.
Yeah.
And
there are no coincidences.
Yeah, there are no coincidences. There's a plan, and he's just going to let it play out. It might not be the plan you like, but it's going to play out to his liking. And that's when we started.
Well, shortly after, we got invited to the church that we currently attend now.
Yeah.
By a friend. And
Stephen.
That is also another God story, really, because Stephen's brother and
was on the same ship I was on.
Yeah, so I met Stephen first at school pickup, and I met him, and I immediately was like, he needs to meet my husband. They're going to get along. He's from the Bay Area. I knew they were going to hit it off really well. And then it was like a day or two later, we pick up our kids from the after school program.
And I happen to have the day off.
Yeah, so he comes with me, and there's Stephen. And I think picking up his kid from the after school program as well. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the guy I was telling you about. And then so I introduced them, and then come to find out, Stephen's brother and him served together on the same ship.
Stand duty on the same days.
Yeah.
And then
again, no coincidences.
Yeah. And then I met Stephen, and I'm like, brother.
Yeah. They hit it off really well.
Yeah, it was pretty good. And then he had already been going to church, and so he extended an invitation to us, like, hey, we'd love for you guys to join us one of these days. No pressure. That was his thing. It was every time he saw it, no pressure. And I think it took a week or two for us to
it took like 3 weeks. I'm pretty sure 2 or 3 weeks. It was 2 or 3 Sundays.
Yeah, but we made it happen. And
eventually.
Yeah.
And that's a testament to being persistent in a way that we didn't feel pressured, right? Because again, he was just so nonchalant, you know, if you come, you come. We're going. This is when we're going. No pressure. I don't know. Instead of like shoving it down your throat, his approach was just, I think, exactly what you needed. And when we didn't go, he showed so much grace, right? Instead of like getting upset that we didn't show up or whatever, or when we had an excuse why we weren't showing up, he never once got upset. There was just so much grace.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what we needed. And we went. And afterwards I was like, God, do you like it? Did you like it? And
I said, yeah, it was cool.
And I held on to that. You said, yeah, it's cool. Okay, we're going back.
Yeah, it's cool. But when I walked up, it was so inviting. Everybody was so welcoming. They genuinely just wanted to talk to you.
Yeah, that's one thing that our church is so good at, is community. And even with your pastor, he just, after each service, he's outside talking to the whole congregation. You know, whoever wants to speak to him, he's there. He makes himself available. It's just community. And so a couple weeks after, there was Connect Sunday, which is when all the groups are outside, like in the roundabout in front of our church with their tables, all the information, the Connect groups, the ministries, everybody's out. And I knew, because we were still driving down to San Diego, going to see our therapist, and we were willing to drive the hour and a half down to San Diego, but it wasn't convenient. So I was like, okay, we need to get into counseling. So I made a beeline over to the marriage ministry, and spoke to Sandra Sappington, who is the director of Living Victorious Marriage. She and her husband started Living Victorious Marriage. But I asked her, I was like, okay, my husband and I, we need something. Do you have mentoring? What can you offer? What do you guys offer? Because we need help. She's like, well, we have mentoring, but I would really suggest you take our Living Victorious classes. And the next one starts at this time. Most of the time, if you go through these classes, you don't need individual counseling. I was like, okay, great. Let me get the info. So I got the info, took it back to Marcos, and he was not really about it, because he still wasn't really about the whole church thing. And so, but he said yes.
Yeah, I was coming along.
Yeah, he said yes. He said he would do it for me, which again, I'm like, okay, let's do it. He sat through the first couple of weeks, just outwardly, he looked like he was willingly there, or wanted to be there,
I
but
was playing the part.
I know my husband, so inwardly. And the first class, or the first session, is all about foundations, and we're in the Bible, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he hates this. I'm just like speaking to myself, I'm like, he hates this. He's just not like, oh, we're going through this verse, oh my gosh, yeah, he's got to open his Bible, he hates this. It's just so it was, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I remember Lee and Sandra going, even if you feel like, you're just here for your wife and you really don't want to be here. And I'm like, man, that's me right now, sister.
yeah. But we kept on going.
And slowly but surely, it started speaking to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'd
Praise
hear
the
a
Lord.
little, I'd start hearing a little piece here, a little piece there. I'd be like, oh, that's deep. I like that.
Yeah.
And then, or you know it,
Mm-hmm.
you're like following along, flipping through the pages.
Mm-hmm. Our group leaders were amazing. They spoke into him and to our marriage like no other. So we took the first class, and the one consistent homework that you have to do is pray together. And every day, whether it be a text message, phone call, face to face, whatever it may be, you pray together once a day. And we had never prayed together.
Nope.
It was so awkward. Such a vulnerable thing to do. But yet it's so funny because we could just, we clearly had a very healthy sex life, but yeah, we couldn't even pray together. That was so much more intimate for us.
I know. It was so awkward. I had a Ricky Bobby moment. I don't know what to do with my hands. But yeah. And I grew up Catholic, right? So it was like,
oh yeah, we
praying.
Didn't go into that.
Yeah. And so I was not a prayer, because it was just so repetitive. And
Mm-hmm.
when I would hear prayer, I just just had like a moment of PTSD,
Yeah.
And
just prayers you have to memorize.
Yeah. But I think that's what attracted me to the prayer within the class, was that they promoted that individual connection,
conversation with the Lord.
Exactly. And then as the classes go on, it's between us and the Lord. And
yeah, so you learn how to bring the Lord into your marriage.
Yeah.
And the closer you get to God, the closer you and your spouse become. And so we had to work through the hurdle of learning how to pray together, learning how to be okay with being awkward, and knowing to do with our hands, but then realizing, well, you can just hold each other's hands.
Yeah.
It's not that awkward. And then praying out loud, that was also another hurdle we had to get through. For me, I pray all the time, but to myself or with our kids.
Yeah.
With our kids and by myself, but not with him.
Not this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which again, I think if she would have just communicated that too. Like, I feel like I would have one done it just for her, but God would have been working through her to get me to react.
Well, and I did. Okay, so we went
100%.
to my father's in the middle of, or we went back home to Georgia. It's where I'm from, and for 2 weeks. So we missed 2 classes, but we're still doing the homework.
Yep.
And
diving into it, yeah.
And I had asked if he could pray over. Well, first I had asked, I was like, "Do you pray for me?" And he was like, "Yeah, I pray for you." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
He as in like, girl, I'm gonna pray for you. I'm gonna pray for you. Not today.
And then, so I have grown up having very bad dreams. So I asked him to pray over my dreams, and he did. He would pray over my dreams at that trip, or during that trip. And then we just started praying together because that was the assignment. And through praying together, that brought us so much closer.
Yeah, because it was so intimate.
Yeah.
I mean, sexuality between us was almost like, it's intimate, but praying together was even more intimate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like that first time you get naked in front of somebody else. Like, that's what it felt like.
Yeah. Oh, most definitely. Like spiritually naked. And it was like, I quickly found that is my love language, being prayed over, having him pray over me. That is my love language. And it like just made me want to be closer to him when we would pray. And it just filled my cup like no other. It was amazing. So then through the first Living Victorious class, he really became reformed. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Then we rolled right into the second class. We had different group leaders, and dynamics in our group really fed
into me,
into him. Yes. The men in that group and just the camaraderie, and it was an amazing group. And that's really what catapulted his faith. I'm so grateful for them. Honestly, Living Victorious classes, that's what's changed him.
Yeah.
And that's what's changed our family. And Living Victorious classes and God coupled together. It's been amazing. And then we took a year off. No, gosh, not a year. Then we took a semester off because he wanted to get into men's Bible study. I wanted to get into women's Bible study, and doing 2 things a week at the time was a lot for us. So we're like, okay, we took the 2 classes. Now we're going to take some time off and we're going to just invest into ourselves.
Yeah.
And, we quickly realized that was a mistake.
Yeah. We started doing things separately, and it just started creating a void.
Yeah. And we weren't intentional in our marriage.
And we quickly realized, like, we need to start attending things together, because it just, especially marriage classes, because it just reinforces.
You're doing maintenance.
Yeah.
And when you're not intentional in your marriage, and you're allowing your marriage just to be in this stagnant state, the enemy will use that and will come in to your marriage.
Yeah.
And cause a rift and use different things to stir up things. And that's what happened with us. The difference is we had tools now.
Yeah.
We knew how to
navigate through it.
Yes, navigate through it. So we did. But it was also a learning lesson of we needed to set boundaries. Before this, we didn't know we needed to set healthy boundaries in our marriage.
Yeah.
You know, we knew all the things that we were taught in the classes, but we didn't know how to set healthy boundaries with other people outside of our marriage. So that's what we did. And that, I think, was the big learning lesson of that semester for us. And then so we quickly, next semester, we got right back in.
And it's been amazing.
And we just vowed we're never going to take a break from being intentional and serving the Lord by helping other marriages, because when you're serving the Lord, we're serving our marriage too.
Yeah.
We're serving other marriages. We're also serving our marriage.
Yeah. And it feels like, at times it feels like a lot, but
And we're exhausted. And,
yeah.
it's not convenient.
But we thrive in the sense that we are helping our community, our marriage, our kids, and it's going to have a long-lasting effect.
Yeah.
Not just to our family, but the entire community.
Yeah. And also just for our kids, but for their kids, because we're also bringing them in, right? And like through our journey to Christ together, now our kids have a relationship with Christ, which is so beautiful to watch.
Yeah. They like, oh, let me start praying for dinner.
Yeah.
I want to do it.
Yeah. They're praying together with their friends. It's just, I don't know. It's been,
which again, it's like a power by association,
Yeah. Show me who your friends are and I'll show you who you are. Through LVM, we have this community of people who are walking the same, going along the same journey as we are. We're all kind of in the same phase of parenting. I don't know. There's just so many similarities. And it was just a community that we prayed for so long. And that's also another commonality with all the couples is they've also been praying for community. So we've all just been praying for each other.
Yeah.
And the Lord has been faithful.
Always.
Yeah. It's been beautiful. So lastly, I want to talk about a conversation we had with Pastor John, our pastor. We were talking, it was after a service. And he knows a bit of our story because a little bit of our testimony, a very, very small part of our testimony has been shared with our church. And we were talking to him about, I don't really remember how this came up a conversation, but our response to him was how we can talk about our testimony. And we do talk about it quite often, helping other couples, and sometimes in conversation that, him and I are just having. And we don't have any like hurt feelings. We don't feel like ill about it at all. And we were just explaining to him this versus, years ago, even just 2 years ago, we would.
Yeah,
there was
be quiet.
Yeah, there's still a little bit hurt.
It'd be a silent night.
But now we can sit here and we can talk about it. And we were telling him this, and he looked at us. What did he say?
It's like, you guys are fully redeemed.
Yeah.
By God.
Yeah.
Like that's what it means to be redeemed.
Yeah. It's like, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And for him to say that, it was just, I never really thought about it.
Yeah.
And to be on the other side.
Yeah, out of the tunnel, that dark tunnel.
Yeah, because it was dark for
many years.
7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we put like a number to it and we say 7 years, a lot of people who we've said that to are like, oh my gosh, you went through 7 years. 7 years of it. But then, what does it say? Actually, now I'm like, the Lord just gave this to me. Isn't there a significance, sorry, I can't speak, between the Lord and the number 7?
Significance?
Yeah, there is. Now that I'm thinking about it, where's my phone? I just looked this up the other day. Hang on. And I never thought about this until now. So, good old Google. It says God stopped on the 7th day. In Hebrew, the number 7 has the same consonants as the word for completeness and wholeness. 7 develops 2 key symbolic associations. One of them is that 1 through 7 all together is a symbol of completeness.
Both our daughters have 7s in their birthday.
Wow. Yeah. We went through 7 years. I'm actually really proud of that. Now. 7 years. Yeah. But anyways, people, when we say that to you, they're like, oh my gosh, 7 years? We're like, yeah, 7 years versus what?
But you know what's the first response? Oh, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, you can. Look at us.
Yes.
We made it through.
Yeah.
Like, it might even take less time than that for
Yeah.
you. You're already leaps and bounds. You're here in the same place we are 7 years down the line. But you're here and you just started your issues. Resolving your issues, better said.
And most of these couples are in a church environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were not in that environment. That's so true, because it's like, okay, 7 years, or what's the alternative? The alternative is that you go find somebody else, and then you're going to have to deal with their stuff.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to deal with your stuff, and you have to start all over again. I mean, I would take 7 years and then live the rest of our life in the state that we're in now.
Yeah.
Any day.
Yeah. Because then, you think about it, you're going to cycle through people. You're going to end up getting on what I call the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
Which is you go through a cyclical cycle with these people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 7 years, right? I went through 7 years with the same person, but they're going to go through 7 years with 3 or 4 people.
Mm-hmm.
They're all going to break up.
This perspective.
Yeah. And they're going to want to take the easy path, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
And honestly, I mean, God picks out your spouse.
Yeah.
Right. And I was listening to something and a couple of days ago, and they were talking about sometimes when you're married, you find yourself married and you're like, man, I married the wrong person. Right. Oh my gosh. And then so sometimes you could start looking elsewhere, but it's like, no, you married the right person, and God knew exactly what that person needs. And that person is you.
Mm-hmm.
And what better person to walk alongside them and to two both grow together. Yeah. You sharpen each other. And really, I mean, and not to say that like we don't have issues. We don't have disagreements, and our marriage is not perfect at all.
It's perfectly imperfect.
Yeah. Amen. But I mean, we have the community.
Mm-hmm.
And in that community, we have people to hold us accountable.
Yep. So if we start feeling like, we're about to pop, we can reach out.
Yeah.
We can be like, hey man, I'm, messing up,
and we have the tools.
Yeah.
Right. We're doing the work. We're constantly staying proactive and intentional, which is huge, makes all the difference in the world. We are checking in with each other.
Yep.
And checking in a way of like quite frequently, and not just like, how are you, but more of like, hey, how do you feel about our marriage? And how do you feel about me? How can I better serve you?
Yeah.
Because the Lord put us together to serve each other, not for me to focus on how you can serve me, but how can I serve you?
And when in doubt, look up the word, No, to be honest, like there are times where something in there will catch your attention and it'll speak to you.
Yeah.
So.
And really, that should be the first thing that we do.
Yeah.
Before we go to our community, before we go to our spouse, before anything, we should be going to the Lord. That's what He wants.
Yeah.
Before we binge watch something on TV or scroll on our phone, before we do anything, we should be going to the Lord instead of those things and seeing what He has to say about the situation.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Yeah, so that's our testimony.
We just want to thank everybody that's helped us, our family, our community, our church, our small group. We wouldn't be able to do this without you guys.
Yeah, and we know that we have been covered in prayer, and we're so grateful for that prayer. We're also so grateful for Living Victorious Marriage and the partnership.
Yeah.
And most importantly, not just the partnership, but for them partnering with the Lord to radically change our marriage.
Yeah.
And for bringing my husband to the Lord.
Yep. Just real quick, I got baptized
He's been
a week ago.
Yes.
So
that was my biggest prayer.
Yeah.
So proud of him. It's been amazing, really.
I'll see you in heaven.
Yeah, we're so grateful for everybody, and I'm also just really proud of us. Just want to say, because this was a big feat.
Yeah.
And a lot of learning lessons.
7 years worth.
Yes. Yeah. And just so grateful to have a testimony with you.
Yeah.
I really am.
Thank you, babe.
Mm-hmm. I love you.
I love you too. We'll put links and stuff down there somewhere.
In the notes, you can find us at The Resurrected Marriage on Instagram. You can also find some of our content on our own YouTube page. And then go on over to Living Victorious on Instagram, Living Victorious Marriage, and check out that content. And if you have any questions, really, or you need prayer or anything, feel free to DM us. For those of you that have our number, feel free to text us, send us a message in any way that you
Smoke
can.
Signals. I'll be watching.
Yeah, that too. We're here for you guys, and we're here to pray over your marriage, and we're here to connect you to the resources that you need if you are struggling in your marriage.
We're here for you.
Mm-hmm. And we're so excited for you guys to go on this journey with us. So until next time, guys.
Hasta luego.
See you soon.